The State Historic Preservation Officer has arrived. I would like her to give her testimony and then continue with a few more questions, maybe 5 minutes each from the senators. And then I'd like to very much hear from the Mr. Duenas from the Fishermen's Co-op and the original landowners. Thank you very much. Please, let's all just focus on going forward because we can't go backward. Let's focus on what we can do going forward, please. Yeah.
Hafa and I apologize for being late, honorable senators. I was producing your packets. I'm the administrative aide too. I would like to read my, it's really an update.
Okay, please. I know. So, I had asked you, what is the status? We've had prior hearings, and I just asked you for an update. Thank you.
Yes. Let me begin by stating that in January of 2000, I assumed a position in the classified service of the government of Guam as Guam Historic Preservation Officer. In August 2000, I single-handedly brought home 311 ancestral remains stored in 88 boxes at the Bishop Museum for over 70 years. Since then, my office has been pursuing for these remains and other remains from around the island to be reinterred. I bring this up today, Senator, so that others may understand that I wholeheartedly care for what happens to our ancestral remains, what happens to Guam and its people, its cultural heritage, and more importantly, as Guam shipper, what happens to its cultural resources. In reference to the impact on historic properties, as stated, I believe you have the packet, in our December 9, 2014 letter to Mr. Campbell, we indicated that alternative 5 was the least favorite, being that it had 34 historic sites that will be directly impacted and 70 sites that will be indirectly impacted. The preferred was Route 15 on their property. I assume they were going to purchase land. Anyway, going back to Senator Esteves, that was the alternate that we least favored, the Northwest Field. As for the number of sites that have been located and recorded to date, 269 have been counted. You'll see that in your attachments 2 and 3. In the training ranges review analysis, table 2, in the table, of the 94 sites listed, 63 were determined eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. The March 28, 2017 list did not specify sites eligible or ineligible. Not listed in these tables are the 4 burials exposed in the original AP for the Water Wells Development Project. It was mitigated by downsizing the project from 90 acres to 42 acres. 1,000 acres were surveyed. These burials were found on sites that were recommended eligible. 2 burials were found near a suspected latte set on a site with many lusongs.
Excuse me, eligible for what?
For listing on the National Register. The burials were secured and preserved in place until such time that our office prepares for the solemn ceremony. With respect to all the sites and burials that were discovered and the potential for future discoveries, it is imperative that our office as the State Historic Preservation Officer, seek a reevaluation of the entire AP and the boundaries outside of the APE. Our request will include a comprehensive evaluation of the Retidian site, Ilitexen, and the impacts of the surface danger zone on this culturally significant settlement site. Outside of this letter, my request will be directed to the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation. And of course, the Governor of Guam will have to know. It is incomprehensible, Senators, that the regulations that invoke the programmatic agreement cannot be used to give indigenous organizations reasonable opportunity to state their concerns, similar to opportunities afforded to Indian tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations. Aptly stated in federal regulations, in quote, the agency officials shall ensure that consultation in the Section 106 process provides the Indian tribe or Native Hawaiian organization a reasonable opportunity to identify its concerns about historic properties, advise on the identification and evaluation of historic properties, including those of traditional, religious, and cultural importance, articulate its views in the undertaking effects on such properties, and participate in the resolution of adverse effects. Thank you, Senator, for inviting our office to present this brief status report to your committee.
Thank you very much. Could you just please restate very clearly, because I heard it, but I want everyone to understand the huge significance of your most recent, I guess you're going to be sending a letter to the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation that answers to the President of the United States.
To the Secretary of the Interior.
And what is it that you're going to ask them?
It's through the Advisory Council that they'll, of course, they'll have to recognize my request to them, and they'll probably ask for more data, more justification as to why we want the complex, the LFRTRC, reevaluated. And my perspective is that there was not enough evaluation, and they did not really consider the settlement site below. Not only is that important, not only is it important, but that site, as you know, has been, we've tried to, it was, the nomination packet was sent to the National Register Keeper, our office back in the 70s. So that's an important ingredient in this request. The letter, of course, will be out by next week. We'll prepare the letter, and we'll see what happens from there. If they will consider a reevaluation of the entire APE, including outside the boundaries, including the Retidian settlement site. There is, you know, it's good. It's worth a try. That's all I'm asking. I'm saying.
Do you think the bulldozing of the limestone forests will be put on hold if pending this reevaluation, or at least a response regarding your request?
There might be a pause. They may have awarded the contract, but they still have to complete the Section 106 process. Now, as to where in the process it needs to be, or what needs to be completed, because the process is extensive, that's another question we'll pose to the Advisory Council. They can probably begin to develop their design plans, but not to do any construction activities until the 106 process is cleared, which will be clarified by the Advisory Council.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to ask Senator Regine Lee for questions for the panel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you all so much for joining us, everyone, for your participation today. I was hearing some frustration on your part, Mr. Crisostomo, as well as some frustration on the part of my colleagues when they're asking some of their questions, and I understand that you feel that you have no jurisdiction in answering some of the questions because some of the federal counterparts that may be better suited to answer these questions aren't here with us. And so for those reasons, you're unable to respond. But since then, our State Historic Preservation Officer has joined us, and I'm really glad that Ms. Aguon is here to respond to some of our questions. And so, in light of your testimony, I just want to be very clear and to try to maybe, just for the record, ask you if you will concur with the position that the firing range construction will negatively impact the cultural and natural resources at Litekten, at Pahun, at Hinapsin, along with Haputo and Arunao. Will you concur?
I will agree that the impact is there. You have direct, indirect, but I agree.
And I understand that you have sent a letter, or you will be initiating a letter?
In consultation with Director Crisostomo, we will be sending a letter. Because what's happening is, yes, there are adverse effects happening, which is why we have found sites, 269 sites, not to mention 4 burials that were that were in place, burials that were there, and probably 1 that was reburied. And there's a latte set. They're assuming it's within a latte set that have a lot of lusongs. So you can pretty much posit from that it's a big set of latte habitation.
Understood, and I agree.
Yes, and going further, because I majored in anthropology, they didn't stick around and stay up on the top of the plateau. They may have gone down, and, so I think that in receiving all these reports with thousands of pages, it's only appropriate that they need to stop, pause everything, do a reevaluation, get their reports in order. The state archaeologist is frustrated because these reports are coming in by different writers, and they're not syncing. So in consultation, I sat with Director Crisostomo. We'll prepare that letter to the advisory council.
Given this negative impact, this harm that it will potentially do to these areas, these villages, will you take it a step further? Will you initiate a hold on the construction process, maybe by federal GSA?
You mean through federal GSA?
Through federal GSA. Will your office do the same thing? You can write a letter and request that they hold the construction through the federal GSA route, in addition to contacting Department of Interior.
Well, in relation to what I do with the advisory council, it'll automatically, because the advisory council have different specialists in the different agencies.
I understand. Yeah.
So it'll go directly to who is in charge of the USGSA. So me directly writing, I can, but it's better if the advisory council take it in their hand. Am I answering your?
Yes,
I can.
I can get into it a little bit in more detail with you, but I want to give my colleagues an opportunity to ask their questions as well. So we'll just maybe go back another round. Thank you very much.